Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of Coach's Corner. My name is Dwayne Dwyer. I go by the Mindset Coach,
My name is the Uncle Junior, and I go by the Consistency Coach.
and we are your coaches for Coach's Corner. As always, if you are here and you are not looking to capitalize off of some of these things that we're going to share with you, then you may not necessarily be in the right place. However, if you're looking to actually do something different with your life, looking for a better outcome, looking to be an impact to those people that you love and care about, and be an impact in your community, I think you're in the right place. Not only that, I think you were destined to be here to listen to the sounds of myself, the mindset coach, and my good friend, the consistency coach, as we share some key things, some key nuggets that can help you in your personal life, your professional life, and in your family life. So, that being said, let me speak to my brother from another mother, the Uncle Junior himself, the consistency coach, the brother I affectionately call C Square. What up, bro? How's everything
What's
going?
what's going on, sir? Everything is well over in Unkland. Everything is well, enjoying the summer, enjoying the time off, enjoying all of those good things. It's always good when you have some time to relax, and even though I practice consistent self-care, it's a little bit different, hits a little bit different when you can string those days along, day after day after day after day, of not having to get up and have to go to work. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So, the ability to work in education and being able to have this type of schedule is very beneficial, unlike, the regular 365, 9 to 5. A lot of people watching this don't get that break. They don't necessarily get that reset. And I think that's one of the best things about education is the schedule,
Yeah.
and we get a reset during Thanksgiving, we get a reset during Christmas, so you get one during spring break. So you get these resets out the year where you can go back and reflect. You can download. You can take deep breaths. You can woo saw. You can go to the beach. You can do a lot of these different things. So I'm very thankful for that space and the ability to work in the profession that I do. So um, I don't know. Sometimes I don't know why I go there. I don't know. How are you, man?
I'm good, man. And I promise you, I ain't gonna tell you nothing about my job. That's it.
Yeah,
I'm just good. That's it.
yeah, yeah. Nothing about the job. Nothing about the job. No job stuff. No job talk tonight.
Hey, man, it's all good. I
Mhm.
understand. And
Yeah.
I'm joking, but I think it's an important thing to be able to appreciate things. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? And the only thing you were just doing was appreciating your schedule.
Mhm.
There's nothing wrong with that. Um, I think for the most part, for those people who don't have the benefit of working in education, they got PTO. So they get to
Mhm.
take, up to 30, I think it's up to 30, depending on what type of schedule they got, how much PTO they actually get. They get to take up to 30 days. You can take them all at once if the company allows it, or you take them periodically and incrementally throughout the year. But so that's the thing to appreciate as well. For me, I just appreciate the fact that today is another day that he allowed me to open my eyes and see the sunshine. Um,
Mm.
I,
Yep.
I like to keep appreciation right there because that to me is the genesis of everything. The day that the day the when the day begins, when I open my eyes, that's the first opportunity I get to appreciate. And then from that point on, that kind of sets the tone for every day. And it just so happened that the sun was shining today and it was a beautiful day and all was well. So I had more to appreciate. I got outside and put a little water on my truck. She was mad at me because I ain't washed in about 4, 5 months.
Mm.
You don't really wash cars in the wintertime, man. So, when the
Yeah, I
sun
don't.
starts coming out, so something else to appreciate. And it is what it is. I know some people don't like washing cars. I'll be honest with you, I don't necessarily like it. But at the end of the
Mhm.
day, I take enjoyment in doing it because I get to, take my time, do it, think about some other stuff. Because there's not a lot of thought in washing a car. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? If I got to think about washing a car, then there's something wrong.
Yeah.
But I get to think about other things while I'm doing that. So that's another opportunity for me to appreciate. Um, so yeah, that's just it. Appreciation is a big deal.
It's funny now you talking about appreciation, which is a little bit different. Somebody who has appreciation for life, I would say that most of these people probably handle rejection pretty well. you seem like a guy who probably handles rejection pretty well because you probably have an appreciation for life and you probably understand that maybe certain things really not that important.
I do now.
I don't know if that's a segue into tonight's topic, but maybe it is, maybe it ain't. But um, first of all, welcome to chat to tonight's episode of Coach's Corner, which is called "Can You Handle Rejection Without Falling Apart?" You know, this was when I thought of this title, it was kind of sort of as me having a conversation with my sons. You know, I remember them growing up having conversation with them. Daddy, can I go and do something? No. And you know, when they early on, maybe they like to start throwing a tantrum until we get them legs a little bit, the net goes away. But as they grow up, they learn to handle the rejection in different ways and in different forms. And sometimes um we have to count to 10 as parents because sometimes the way they handle rejection is not always comfortable, or not I won't say comfortable, it's not always um, appropriate for how they should be handled rejection, especially when I tell you no about something. But that's kind of what, not necessarily the lens I want to start with, but I'm just saying, you know, that's where the kind of the conversation came from, or the topic came from. So I just want to kind of put that in context. So maybe we will stay there with the family. Maybe we will adjust. Maybe we'll talk about our adult kids. Maybe we would talk about us as adults, as people in the chat, and you know, different things like that. Because you know, how many of us can say that we have always handled rejection without falling apart. But before we go on and before we continue, shout out to the chat. Thank you for being here. Every single person, we understand you could be somewhere else, but we really appreciate you for being here tonight. Go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, and share with anybody else. Be coach. Before I continue, is there anything else that you would like to say before we dive into tonight's topic?
No, just ditto, ditto. Shout out to the chat. Always good to have you guys with us. And like we tend to say, we look forward to all of the value that you're going to add because you are a functional part of the show.
Absolutely. And feel free to be part of the conversation. So tonight we're going to start with we're going to start with kind of a baseline of definitions, kind of like we do here sometimes, so we can so people kind of understand where we're coming from when we talking about rejection and falling apart. So coach, I would like for you to weigh in, but I'm gonna give you what I came up with, and then you can feel free to chime in once I get done. So the first one is rejection. Rejection is the act of being denied, dismissed, or not accepted, whether it's by a person, opportunity, or situation. And falling apart means mentally, emotionally, or behaviorally breaking down in response to pressure, disappointment, or pain. So, coach, in your opinion, based off those definitions, add to take away, what is rejection and what is falling apart?
Oh, man. This is why I love our language because our language is just so amazing.
Hmm.
Um, it's almost like you'll get words, and the word is an addition to a root word, but then the new word seems to change in definition to um, some degree.
Hmm.
Um, because, just like the root word of rejection is like reject, right? And so, I don't know. The first thing that comes to my mind is like when you think of an assembly line, and then you see that one part, and that one part has, and I'm just using this as an analogy, that one part has a deformity, so you reject it off the line, or it
Mhm,
goes into a particular machine, and that machine rejects it because it does not fit the parameters of
mhm,
what they're looking for. And then when you look at the TION, it's almost like the state, kind of like the state of being, or an environment, whatever the case may be. And I'm not saying that the previous definition that you gave is wrong, but I also, to add to that, is almost like the state or environment of being in a space. And I think that's probably going to come into play as we continue to talk. The state or environment of being in a place to where you were, I don't mean anything bad or derogatory by saying this, but where you were rejected.
mhm,
So it's rejection is you staying in that place kind of like ruminating on the fact that you weren't accepted like everybody else that was accepted. Falling apart, on the other hand, is kind of like the what's that term they use? Crash out. Like
Crashing out. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
crashing
going
out.
postal.
Right? Yeah, going postal.
Yeah, that was our term.
Yeah, that's it. So you falling apart. That's what it is. Like you because of the rejection, and I'm just tying these two together. It's almost like you have like this very immature response to that. And I say immature, I mean it doesn't have the degree of emotional intelligence, the emotional regulation that you should have as a mature adult. And therefore it's almost like me behaving childlike because it didn't work out the way I had it in my mind.
Yep. I like that. I like that, and I appreciate the add to that you did for this first question. Um, but let's get right into the conversation for tonight. Once since we've already kind of defined the definitions and kind of set the baseline for the conversation going forward. So, how should someone handle rejection? Now, this is very subjective, you know what I'm saying? And it's like that on purpose, and job, relationship, family members, home, loan, whatever it is that you've been rejected about. How should someone handle rejection? Now, again, it's very open, it's very broad, and it's like that on purpose because I didn't want to pigeonhole you into a certain spot. I wanted you to be able to be as free as possible because people handle rejection all different types of way. But I do think that there may be some generalities in how someone should handle rejection about certain things depending on what it is. But what say you and how someone should handle rejection?
My response would be gracefully and with humility. I think part of the issue that we experience when rejection happens is that um, we have this preconceived notion in our mind that I was supposed to be accepted. I should have been accepted. Like you don't have the right to exercise an opinion. That's like I used the example for a job. Just because I got to the interview does not necessarily mean that I'm guaranteed to be selected. They still have the opportunity to make the selection for the most qualified candidate based upon what they're looking for. That's the caveat, based upon what they're looking for. It's not always just the most qualified candidate. So you may be the most qualified candidate based upon the people that you know who made it to the interview, because you know how people get to talking and all kind of stuff like that and get to comparing themselves to one another. But the company still gets a vote. The other person on the other side of the relationship still gets a vote, right? The bank gets a vote. So all of those things factor in. I think when we believe that their answer doesn't line up with my answer, that is a clear hint of arrogance. I'm sorry. I said it. I apologize. My name is Garfield Martin. I'm joking.
Five, five, five.
Well, yes, that's really what it is. It is a hint
uh,
of arrogance. And probably it's trying to teach me something about myself at a more deeper level than what I'm even realizing. So handle it with humility. Don't think that just because I made it to the table that I get I get what I want when I get there, for starters. And then secondly, handle it gracefully. Take it in stride. Don't lose your mind. Like just try to find the silver lining in the whole thing. You got some on your mind right now.
yeah, because you always talk about people being nice, and I think you went the nice way with this one. And I'm gonna be real with it.
Okay.
Come on now, that ain't how people act,
But
coach.
wait, you say how should, and then you started off by
How should
saying
there
you
you
didn't want
go.
to.
Correct.
I just want to make sure.
I digress. I digress.
Did I
Now,
understand the assignment? I just want to make sure.
you yes,
All right.
you handled the assignment 100% correctly. Um, but man, I don't really feel I ain't gonna say me, but I'm speaking on behalf of other people that I've seen
Mm-hmm.
on social media and conversation I've heard from people. And people have I ain't gonna say the audacity.
Sure.
I've been working hard. I'm 47 years old, not me. I'm
Hmm.
just an imaginary person. 47. I've been working hard my whole life. I deserve it. I'm going out here and I apply for this home loan and I don't get it. Right? I've been working hard in my job for the last 17 years. I saved up $3,200 right? And now I'm ready to go get this $750,000 loan for this house. And it don't matter what the numbers are. How can, let's say, it's not something extravagant like that. Let's say if it's just an average person going out to get a home loan. They've been working hard for their whole life and they actually set out and they really go out and they go get this home loan and they don't get it. I think it's hard for a lot of people to walk away from that feeling gracefully and humbly. You know what I'm saying? So when you sit up here, coach, with your naked face and you tell me after I done worked hard and I didn't get rejected for this loan, I'm supposed to feel grateful and humble. I don't feel like that. I worked
Mhm.
my butt off. I worked overtime. I saved up some money. So how can that be? How can I feel like that when I just got rejected?
If I can reach through the screen, I would reach and put my hand on your back and pat you and say, "There, there."
Mhm.
That's the answer. There, there.
They're
Like
there.
we got to recognize some things. First of all, let's just and I'll go across the board. Let's just say job.
Mhm.
I want a job.
Mhm.
You have the job that I want. Who is in the position of decision?
The person who has the job.
The person who has the job. So at the end of the day, they don't really care about how I feel when they make their decision. They didn't make their decision based upon the criteria of how I feel. So at the end of the day, when I take how I feel and make that the focus of the conversation, it is a waste of a conversation for starters. The only one that's exempt from like, and just going off of the stuff down here, right?
Mhm.
Relationship, even though it's not, it's a whole nother conversation I dare not get
Yes.
into right now. Family member, that's the same thing. Same thing with a home loan though. Home loan, like I want house. They have the money. I want you to loan me the money so I can get said house. But then I get mad at you because my debt to income ratio isn't ideal for you to get in relationship with me. Even though I make a lot of money at work, they don't care. You make a lot of money, but you spend a lot of money as well because you out
Mhm.
there flossing and doing all this other stuff you ain't got no business doing. And in their mind, what they're saying is that you're not mature enough for me to loan you this money. That's really what
Mhm.
they're saying. So I get how you feel, right?
Mhm.
And I know it's not you. To the people who you were talking about, I get
Yes.
how you feel. And you're not wrong for how you feel. You're only wrong for expressing how you feel without any analysis to understand why you feel the way you feel. Do you feel the way you feel because they didn't give you the money for the house? They didn't hire you for the job, even though they had like 4 or 5 other candidates that went to the interview? Or do you feel the way you feel because in your mind you walked in and you used some type of false um, positive affirmation that says that this is my house. It ain't your house till you sign that
Mhm.
paperwork. That's the thing that I share in relation to what you're saying because I know what you're saying is
Mhm.
reality for some people,
Yeah.
but then some people look at that reality and say something different. Okay, I
Mhm.
didn't get this job. Let me go back and look at myself and see what is it about me that I didn't that to where I wasn't selected. Was it the job qualification? So I look at this and I look at that, the job announcement, and I look at my resume and I start doing a comparison. Maybe I was lazy and I took my resume as is and just applied for job. I didn't take my resume and catered it to the job that I wanted. And when the hiring manager seen it, it's like, oh, they got all the qualifications, but you're making me hunt for it on your resume because you got the last 10 years of your job on here. That might be the problem, right? It's not that you don't have the qualifications. That job just wasn't important for you to do the work. That's how they look at it. So it's like we got to be honest with ourselves sometimes. Are you really mad at them or are you mad at yourself? And if you're mad at yourself, that's good. You should be mad at yourself. Don't get mad at them. Right now, can I go back and start talking about, oh, well, these things exist. You got these groups of people that want to prevent, forget all that. There's nothing you can do to change that right now. The only thing you can do is change your situation and you.
Only reason I threw this up because I thought you was going to segue right into this question
I
right here.
was, and I
You were
saw it.
right there. I'm just like, here he go. I said, I'm gonna wait till he finished, and I was like, nah, I'm just gonna throw it up here, and I said he gonna hit it. But like you already right there, you know what I mean? Now that you have been rejected, now you can come up with a plan. Now you can figure out why you were rejected. Maybe it was because my credit to debt ratio was bad. Maybe it's because my spending habits was bad. Maybe this was not the right loan for me. Maybe there is something better in store for me. You know what I mean? There's a lot of different reasons
Sure.
why someone may not get something. So I know I kind of started, but do you I believe that rejection can be a gift in disguise, but what do you think?
I agree. I agree. I think rejection, I won't even say can be. I think it is a gift
Yes.
in disguise. I know with I've had countless conversations with people who want to like need help in certain arenas. I say it that way. And it was in relation to a lot of the things that you talked about: job, family matters, interpersonal relationships, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And the issue that we uncovered is exactly what I just said previously. But then as time progressed, what I later heard them tell me is that, you know what, I'm glad I didn't get that job because I never would have looked I
Mhm.
never would have bettered myself and I never would have discovered this job. I'm glad I didn't get that house because another house opened up and that house was better. And by the time that house opened up, it allowed me to get my spending habits under control. Right. When we talk about houses, like some people just don't know, one of the worst things that you can do once you get pre-approved for a loan is to go out there and start buying furniture for the house. Because when you
Mhm.
spend that lump sum of money, now it's reflecting, and then you might mess around because they got to run your credit twice. So when they go back a second time to do it, they'd be like, "Oh, well, no, you don't spend up a whole bunch of money." But I was approved. Yeah, you were pre-approved. You wasn't
Word.
approved. It's two different things, right?
Mhm.
You don't do anything major. Continue to do what you've been doing until you get that second approval. In fact, I tell people, don't do anything different until you get them keys. Once you get them keys, then you can do it. So it helps me to look at a couple of things. First and foremost, I always like to talk about it helps me to understand my chain of thoughts. What are the things that are driving me to think the way that I was thinking during the time that I got rejected? If I didn't get the job, what was I thinking all the way up to the point of the interview and then them telling me that I was rejected? Did I go into it thinking that, oh, I'm a shoe in for this? When I seen this job title, they made this just for me and I didn't have to do anything. Like, did I go into it? Like, did I present myself in a professional manner? Did I answer questions thoroughly and articulately in order for them to understand that I not only look good on paper, but with you, this relationship that I am lobbying with you to get, that you would make a great decision by choosing me? Was that my mindset, or did I go into it and say, "Yep, you see it, I'm good. When can I start?" You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm exaggerating when I say that, but a lot of times some people come to the interview with that mindset. So when we look at that gift that's found in rejection, then the only thing that we can ever do is take a look in the mirror and say, what do I need to change about my approach? What do I need to change about my thinking habits? What do I need to change about my posture in order to be properly suited for the next position?
Yeah, man. I think like you said, it's not can rejection be a gift, it that it is. You know, rejection is a gift in disguise. I mean, I've been rejected. I'm sure you've been rejected. Like we all have. But it's like you said, what do we learn from rejection? You know, I remember going promotion board one time and went to the promotion board, but I excuse me, I got rejected. Once I got done, I didn't get my promotable status. And I had the opportunity to whine and moan as I did. But at the end of the day, it didn't matter. I still had to go back through the board and figure out what was wrong. So at the time when I got rejected, I didn't know exactly why I got rejected because I go in there and then um I do what I'm supposed to do and all of those different things like that. And then we leave, and then at the end we come back and they let you know if you got your promotable status or whatever like that. So then they pretty much said, well, you didn't do this or this, but it was very vague and, really wasn't a lot of details behind it. I think what they did was they left that for my supervisor, and they shared a lot of those more details with him, and then he ended up sharing a lot of those things with me. But what I had to do is I had to go back and take those things that I didn't do well doing the board and then work on those things along with the other things and sharpen those other areas as well, and then go back and present myself to the board again. But that was a rejection, but I didn't like it, but that was necessary because I wasn't ready at the time. And even though I didn't see it, those senior non-commissioned officers who had 14, 15, 20, 25 years in the military, they knew, they seen 1,000 of me before. So they had already knew a certain thing about me, and they knew that I wasn't ready yet either based off of how I performed at the board. So it definitely can be it definitely is a gift in disguise. And it's a gift, especially if you learn from it. If you don't learn from it or you don't take the lessons learned from it, then I think you're missing out on it.
I don't disagree at all. And I rem
Application.
yeah, I remember those days,
Mhm,
and the best part about it, you're gonna get well, I'll talk about that specifically. You'll get a lot of feedback, right? Which
mhm,
is really what you need coming out of the board, right? You go in there, you're waiting for the feedback from the board members, but if you had a good sponsor, your sponsor was in the back of the room taking notes based upon what you were doing as well. So when you
mhm,
leave out of the room and go in the hallway, your sponsor is telling you what they observed in you. So it's like it can give you a degree of comfort before you find out what the board actually decided, or it can give you a little bit of anxiety or frustration, whatever.
yeah,
But I think that also applies with other stuff as well. Like,
mhm,
if I got rejected from a home loan, they actually send me the information that tells me why I was
yeah,
rejected. If I
yeah,
didn't get the job, right? Well, most jobs won't tell you, but you can even send them a letter thanking them for the opportunity, so forth and so on. That actually leaves a really good impression in the mind of most employers. Like even if you don't even know whether you got the job yet, just send them a letter thanking them for the opportunity to interview prior to them deciding. And then when you didn't get accepted, thank them again. That goes a long way, believe it or not. It shows that you are mature. It shows that you have the right state of mind. And then maybe, next time, they have a job, they may reach out to you directly and see if you're still available. Who
mhm,
knows?
yeah. Guess what time it is? We 30 minutes in the show, man. It's time
Man,
for some fact or myth.
myth,
MYFFF.
straight up myth
Alright,
right
so the
now.
first fact or myth is this one. This is a good one. I think people hear it a lot of times. So rejection means you're not good enough.
Hmm. I like this question. I really do.
Mhm.
And as I'm assuming, because that's what it is, I'm
Put your steel
assuming,
toes put your steel toes on, folks. Put your steel toes on.
as I'm assuming that most people are typing the M word, let's back up. Because remember, in the beginning, we talked about what the word reject means.
Mhm.
Let's be completely transparent and honest for a moment. Does it mean that you're not good enough in its totality? No, that's not what it means. However, does that mean you wasn't good enough in that moment? Absolutely. That's precisely what it means. You were not good enough according to their metrics and their desire for what they were looking for. Whether we're talking job, whether we're talking home loan, whether we're talking relationship, so forth and so on. I got it. That doesn't feel good. That doesn't even sound good. That goes against what everybody like to tell you. But you know what that helps you to understand? That helps you to understand that there's still improvement that I can do. So is it a and is does this mean that this is the end of the road for me? I can't get any better from here? No, absolutely not. But that's exactly what rejection means. Rejection means that you are not good enough based upon the criteria that they established in that particular moment. And it's not, and here's the other side to it. You may have been good enough, but somebody else was better. And so they went with better instead of good, right? I mean, great is always better than good. Let's just be completely transparent. So when we look at, this statement, let's remove the common social norms that people tend to say, because we always talk about the not good enough and the self-loathing behavior and things of that nature. But if you were rejected, there was a reason why you were rejected in that moment. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. Learn from it, grow, get better. Fact.
Um, fact. Fact. I was not expecting that answer. I was not expecting I didn't have a expectation, but I wasn't expecting fact, especially with that level of detail. So you said all of the things. Um yeah, that was a good one. Yeah, fact. I bet a lot of people put myth in there.
And understand why.
Yeah, I do too. Because I think that's something you can say. That's something we've kind of already heard. Oh, you good enough. It's okay. But I think in sports, that's why I like sports. You know what I mean? Sometimes because sports, or like track, like on that day, you are not good enough. When you get second place, that's like being rejected from first place. You're not in first place. You got rejected. You're in second place. You are not good enough that day. It is okay. It does not mean that you're a horrible athlete. Does not mean you're a horrible person. Does not mean you're fast enough. You just was not good enough that day. And that is okay. Again, it's just like the other part. The rejection, it gives you an opportunity to see where you're lacking, then you can go back and you can assess it, and you can get better. So,
Let me add one more piece to it, right?
yes, sir.
Because when we hear good enough, we just take it as a blanket statement.
Mhm.
What we need to process is one word that we never add to it. And because we never add this word to it, we just take it as a blanket statement. At the end of the term good enough, put the word for,
Mm.
because now we're being more specific. When I make it just a blanket, it doesn't work for you. But
Mm.
if I put the word for at the end, now it makes me define it. So if we're talking job, I wasn't good enough for that particular job. Does that mean I'm not good enough? No, that's no. That just means I wasn't good enough for that particular job. If we're talking that particular house again, for that home loan or for that house. So when we define stuff and make it more specific, now it works in our favor. But if we just leave it as a blanket statement, well, I mean, I can answer blanket statements all day long. And I mean, this isn't against you. This
Yeah.
I'm saying this for people who are hearing this. Like when you get blanket statements, and for the most part, it's like saying all men are, all women are. False. Every
Yeah.
time. It doesn't matter what you say at the end of it, it is false. So
Mhm.
if you ever hear somebody say all men, that is a total rejection for now. I am rejecting that statement because that statement is not fact.
Yeah.
So it's like we got to be more specific with a thing. When we
Yeah.
get specific with it, we can see the truth or the fact in the thing. That's okay. Then we can move forward from there.
All men you picked, all women you dealt with.
Right.
That makes it, like you said, that makes it more specific and not just a generalization about all men or all women.
Hmm.
Good point. Good point. Um, Fact or myth? Everyone experiences rejection at some point. It's a pretty easy one.
That's a fact.
Yeah, fact all day long. We gave y'all an easy one, folks. Fact or myth? You should always avoid what rejected you.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Ooh.
Before we go there, I
Mhm.
want I don't even think you just seen what just happened. I made
Uh-huh.
a statement about blanket statements that's all inclusive, and then you gave me a blanket all inclusive statement that was a fact.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I'm done.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
You should always avoid what rejected you. No, myth.
Myth.
Absolutely not. I think, and this is why I hate some of these socially normalized phrase, right?
Mhm.
Go where I'm tolerated. Go where I'm appreciated, not tolerated. Right? I hate that phrase because at the end of the day, if my behavior isn't the standard, if anybody is still dealing with me based upon my substandard behavior, sure, they're tolerating me in that moment, but they're at least giving me the opportunity to get better. Right.
Mhm.
So it's like there's something I can learn in that particular environment, even though I don't necessarily feel appreciated. Well, part of the reason I don't feel appreciated is because they won't accept my stuff.
Yep.
I almost said something else. They won't accept
It's
my
tough
BS.
stuff.
That's what it is. So sometimes, and if I'm being honest, a lot of times we need to flock to the things that's difficult instead of running from the things that's difficult. So if you feel it rejected you, there's a lot I can learn from that. Like if Mr. Martin had a job, and I'm using job because it's easy. If Mr. Martin was a hiring manager and I know him, and he said, "Hey man, you need to apply for the job." Okay, cool. And so I apply for the job, and I don't get the job because I'm going in there thinking I'm a shoe in because I know him. I'm like, I can still go to him and say, "Hey man, can we talk? Like, what happened?" You know what I'm saying? You're like, "Hey man, you came in the half cocked. You wasn't ready. You ain't had
Mhm.
your mind. You ain't had your head screwed. Did you go in there thinking that I was just going to give you the job? Now you're taking our relationship for granted." So that's why I say you again. Always is the optimal term, right?
Mhm. Yeah, always.
Kick that out of there, right?
Yeah.
You should avoid what rejects you. Well, learn from that thing why you were rejected. Like, could you imagine? And I'm just gonna go social media real quick. Could you imagine that I think all of us experienced this, especially when we were younger. Like you wanted to, you know, be in a relationship with this person. Like she was like the most popular girl in school and things of that
Mhm.
nature. And you wanted to, you want to be in a relationship with her. And she's like, nope.
Mhm.
Could you imagine if we had first of all, the intestinal fortitude. Secondly, the maturity to say, hey, can we just talk in relation to that? Like, can you
Mhm.
give me some ideas about why you said no? And
Mhm.
if she agreed to have that conversation with you, could you imagine what that would do for you? Even
Mhm.
just from a simple self-esteem standpoint. Because a lot of time, no is a complete answer. Then we, run to the hills. I don't ever want to see you again. You're the worst friend ever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Stuff like that. But
Yeah.
everything from no to the point that we sitting in the room hitting LL Cool J, I Need Love,
Yeah.
play and rewind over and over again
Mhm.
because our feelings hurt. We made everything up from no up to that point. So imagine what that would look like if we had the ability and the intestinal fortitude to have a conversation about why we were rejected.
Yeah. And yeah, like you said, the part that you said always makes it a myth. Like you said, throw it out. But I like how you went in a little bit more detailed about this whole question.
Yeah,
So
man, because everybody listen, I Need Love over and over again. Y'all know it. Stop playing.
yeah, yeah, LL is the man. Here's another one. We got one more fact or myth for right now. Fact or myth. This is a good one. But
Men
this one is specific to men.
mhm.
Men should just go tough it out when rejected.
Part of
Blanket
me,
statement again, and I
it
know this
it
is
is, it is.
subjective and it's gonna depend on what the situation is too.
But does it? See, for me, I would have to define tough it out
Mhm. Yeah.
because in my mind, if I say tough it out, like push through what it is you're feeling in that particular moment.
Yeah,
If
that's what I
that's
mean, like
right, if that's the answer, if that's the answer to tough it out, then the answer is always going to be yes. Like
yeah.
you can't stay in that hyper emotion, and this is said with the assumption that the person who was rejected is in a hyper sense of emotionalism, right? If you're in a hyper sense of emotionalism, then you're just going to keep recycling the fact that you were rejected and probably replaying in your mind what rejection means to you. But you got to push through that, whatever that thing is. Like again, like I always say, analyze what you're feeling, get the answer from the analysis, make the adjustment based upon the analysis, and push through what you're feeling right now. Because the only way you're going to get through the other side of that emotion is by making the decision. But the decision that you're making when you're hyper emotional is the decision to stay in it. And so you keep replaying in your mind the reason why, as you see it, you're rejected.
So if I'm 24-year-old young man, I'm with this young lady, and then we split up or whatever like that. And so pushing through is still dealing with it, but it's so toughen it out. Are you saying? Because I'm thinking we're at the same place. Toughen it
Mhm.
out is also meaning I'm toughing it out, but I'm pushing through at the same time. So it's like it doesn't mean that I'm not getting help. It doesn't mean I'm not getting support. It just means I'm dealing with whatever I'm going through.
Correct.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
I agree. If that's what we're going with, and I like that definition, then I agree it is a fact. But I can see how some people are like, "Nah, don't just tough it out." Um, I understand where they're coming from, but I think that's the point where they were just like telling us, "Tough it out, don't go to sick call" when we were privates. You know what
right.
I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's not. I don't agree. I don't think we should do that.
No,
You
I
know what I
agree.
mean? I think if something is wrong, you go and seek help for it. But um, yeah, I don't know.
There's a there's a common denominator in every situation that you've been in.
There you go.
That's the thing that you're going to have to deal with. If you
Mhm.
deal with the right thing, then moving forward, you learn to deal with other things better. But if I never deal with the right thing and I've just created, and again, I'm gonna go back to it because I know everybody knows what I'm talking about, but I'm creating a more in-depth relationship with LL Cool J, and he don't even know it. When I'm alone in my room, you know what I'm saying? That's you just sit there over and over again. When I'm not dealing with the right thing, I'm dealing with the wrong thing.
Mhm.
So then when I finally get over that situation, I'll be honest with you, most men get over that situation by finding themselves in another situation, especially at that age. So
Mhm.
now
Yeah.
they never dealt with that thing that needed to be dealt with within them. So guess what they just set the conditions for? To have to deal with it again at a later point in
Yep.
time. And you will continue to do that until you deal with it. That thing is you. That's the common denominator.
All right, so we keep getting back to some relationships and stuff like this. So here's what I'm going to do. I was going to hold off on this scenario, but I'm going to put it up right now. So,
Man, we have 42 minutes. You would go hold off on
hey, it's segue right into its perfect. It's a perfect spot for it. All right, so someone, whoever it is, there ain't no age of the person. You've been talking to someone for a few months. The connection feels strong. You start thinking long term. Then suddenly they say, "I think you're great, but I just don't see a future with us." That's some rejection right there. Floor is open.
it. Can be.
Humbly and gracefully.
It can be, but most people don't want the truth when it comes down to this.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's something that's happening in this particular moment right now.
Mm-hmm.
First and foremost, whoever this person is, not the person that said, I think you're great, but whoever this person is, made an assumption, changed the dynamics, something happened. I don't know what it is. There's something behind this statement that caused this conversation, right? If the connection feels strong, why are you trying to change the connection? Like, stay in the strongness of the connection and become the person that this person can see a future with. That's why I say it's not going to be a comfortable response because
Mm-hmm.
most people who've seen this already say, hey, you know what? Cut ties. But what is the cut ties? What are you cutting ties for? What are you
Mm-hmm.
cutting ties from? Because at the end of the day, the relationship, from my understanding, was still intact. You just needed some more definition with it. That's what it sounds like. So, in other
Mm-hmm.
words, you asked the question to where that other person couldn't answer the question honestly, which means that you went into that conversation with the expectation of one response. And because they did not give the one response that you see how this starts to sound the same?
Mm-hmm.
It will always go back to the same thing. You end up setting the conditions for the rejection that you experience. And therefore, at the end of this, because if you then now you get to create the narrative in your head about why we didn't work. Oh, well, she wasn't, or he wasn't mature enough, or they weren't in the space to want this. But wait, stop. Let's back up before this conversation happened. What was going on here? Were you guys spending time with each other? Were you guys enjoying each other's company? Were you guys, you see what I'm saying? But
Mm-hmm.
then this happens. And
Yeah.
then when this happens, now you get to create the narrative in your head because it didn't line up with what you were thinking when you went to ask the
Mhm.
question. That's why I say this is not going to be a comfortable response. And I
Yeah.
know people are looking at the screen sideways. I'm okay with that. Listen, I'm okay with that. I don't say
Yeah.
things because I am looking for, confirmation. I say things for people to consider because when you realize in most relationships there is a control dynamic that is an issue, then you will realize that that's probably one of the things that you're going to always deal with every time you present this question.
Yep. And then it looks like this person right here The person's talking about the connection feels strong and start thinking long term that you're going based off of your feelings and and assumptions. Like that's you feel that the connection is strong. This is a feeling. Have you guys talked about, those feelings and stuff like this? You start thinking long term. Have you guys talked about anything long term? So I like how you talked about, setting the conditions and stuff like that and the whole narrative and stuff like that. That was
Okay,
I could see all the chat.
oh, yeah.
They like, what's going on over here?
Coach is
We ain't
crazy.
coming here for this.
He got PTSD. No, I'm joking. Um,
PTSD, yeah.
let me ask this because, like,
Mhm,
I like to ask this question because when I ask this question, I get the most interesting looks, and
mhm.
in my mind, I'm sure you've already considered it. Like, you and Ken were friends for how long?
Ken Rice?
Uh-huh.
Shoot, like 2000, 2004, 2005, somewhere around
Yeah.
there, over 20, at least 20 years.
Right. I've known Ken since 1999.
Mm,
Here's the funny part about it. I've never went to Ken and say, the connection feels strong. I'm thinking long term.
yeah,
It just happens.
it just happens.
That's the
If the
problem that
connection is
we
there.
encounter with relationship.
Mm,
We want to define the thing according to the thing that makes me feel comfortable. That means I have an insecurity that I need you to hold on to for me. Let me give this thing, let me give you my insecurity right now in the midst of this conversation. But when you look at your friendships, you've never done that. Either you guys vibe or you don't. And
yep,
if you don't, that's okay. You don't hate the person unless they really did something to you, something
yeah.
egregious, right? But you just vibe. And then you vibe, you continue to have this relationship for a duration. And then when life happens and they start doing things differently and you see them left, guess what? That's okay too. Because then when they pick up the phone and say, "Hey, what's up, Garfield? What's going on, man? This D. Oh, what up, man? I ain't talked to you about 12 years. That's all right. You know what I'm saying? What's happening? It's almost like you pick
Oh,
up like,
good.
yeah, it's only one space where that happens.
Mm. Well, with that said, that segue right into the next question. It's like you on my cheat sheet.
My bad.
So why does but not a, it's a great thing. Um, so why does in this is assuming that rejection hits harder when it coming from family close friends. So based off of that assumption, why does rejection hit harder when it comes from family or close friends if it does?
Um, if it does,
If it does.
I would say it hits harder because we view family members as superhumans, meaning that, well, because we're family, we're supposed to automatically be in a category. They don't have the right to live as other humans, as you give other humans the right to live. So, because we have this title, because you're my brother or because you're my sister by blood, right? We share the same parent or parents. Well, you should behave this particular type of way. But then when you don't behave this particular type of way, I'm disappointed and I'm mad. And then my thoughts is like, why? They're adults. If they don't behave that particular type of way and you have your life set up to such a degree to where people who behave this type of way aren't in your social circle, then guess what? Your brother and your sister isn't in your social circle. That doesn't
Mhm,
mean they're not your brother or your sister anymore. That just means that I am not going to change the boundaries that I established for my life just because we have the same parent. So when we look at this, it hits harder because in our mind, we believe that this person is supposed to behave this type of way. Why? Because that's my sibling. And I'm using sibling as an example, right? Because that's the easiest one to define, right? Again, humbly and gracefully,
briefly.
humbly and gracefully, stop trying to define somebody else's life for them. Let them define it for themselves and see if it meshes with yours. If it does, great. If it does not, great. The answer doesn't change.
Mhm. Yeah, I think there's a little bit are you saying there's some expectation of there from certain people? I would agree with that. Um, yeah, it's just like certain people you do hold to a certain standard in your family, and sometimes it's grandma, sometimes as grandpa, and when, or even maybe a close cousin,
Yeah.
and you got that real close cousin, and then that cousin gets married, and then you don't get that invitation to the wedding. You know what I mean? And you like, dang, I thought me and cuz was way closer than that. You know what I'm saying? But then what you're doing is you automatically in your mind
Mhm.
assuming why you got rejected.
Right.
And it's because part of, at least in this scenario, you thought that their relationship was a lot stronger than what it was, but at the same time, you don't know why you got rejected. You know what I mean? So
Sure
until
you
you
do.
really know why you got rejected, because it might not even really be a rejected, but in your mind, it's rejection because you didn't get invited to the wedding. But it may not be a rejection. It may just be financial thing. It may be something else behind it that not rejection at all.
Yeah, it might be a financial thing, it might be a seating thing, it might be a number of different things, but,
Mhm.
I'm telling you, rejection only comes from one source. It always comes from one source, my expectations.
Mm,
When I remove my expectations out of it and I allow the other person to be who they are regardless, then I have to learn to be okay with their decision because they're grown. You listen, you have the latitude to make any decision that you want to make in your life. And if for whatever reason I believe that because of my interpretation of our relationship that you should do this, I'm in error.
mm.
I'm always in error when it comes down to that. That's where rejection comes from.
I get it. You own it tonight. I got something. This is for the audience and the coaches, but we don't necessarily have to go into big detail about it. But if you're in the audience, if you're in the chat or whatever like that, feel free to chime in and write your comment or your thoughts on this. So, what is one thing you learned from tough rejection? And I would say for me, one thing I learned from a tough rejection was that I wasn't perfect and that um I had some ego problems that I needed to work on. And I would just say um that rejection was probably throughout my first marriage. When you're with somebody and then they leave you or they decide they don't want to be with you anymore, you feel rejected. You know what I mean? I'm way past all of that stuff, but I've pulled out some great lessons from that relationship. And one of the things is that, you know, in that marriage, I spent a lot of times pointing the finger across the table at the other person, when only at some point I had to realize that you was not perfect, that you had some issues. And so what I learned from that rejection from the marriage was I learned how to grow up, and I learned how to get through things and understand that I'm responsible for my actions and I can only control my actions. So that's some of what I learned um from rejection,
You
amongst
know,
other
it,
things.
it's funny that was your response,
Mhm,
because that's actually my response as well.
mhm,
Um, on top of everything else I said so far tonight, I think that was the toughest lesson that I learned from rejection, but it's gonna sound a little different. And I'm not saying that I didn't do the finger pointing and things of that nature. I did that as well, but that
mhm,
wasn't a lesson. There was another lesson that came from that for me. There's a scripture in the Bible to where King Saul was given some instructions to go do something in detail. He was given clear, concise instructions on who he needed to go service. Some may use that term for now. Who he
mhm,
needed to go service and how. But he changed those instructions when he went to do so. And so instead of servicing them as he was instructed, he kept a few things and brought back to the kingdom. Well, the man of God was sent to him afterwards and asked him a question. And, he started giving excuses about why he did it. And then ultimately, the next thing that came about was, what obedience is better than sacrifice, right? And stubbornness is like in the witchcraft. Moving forward, the next thing you heard, because the man of God who was a little, he was upset, they had a good relationship. And the word came to him, the word of God came to him and said, "Why do you still mourn over that which I rejected?" The lesson that I learned is that in the midst of, excuse me, in the midst of disobedience and in the midst of stubbornness, rejection come knocking at the door. So it took me to have to go back over my life and consider during that time frame, where was I disobedient? Where was I stubborn? That's when I finally learned to stop pointing the finger. So I say all that to say that sometimes we, not sometimes, all the time, we set the conditions for the rejection that we experience. Some of the rejection come externally, some of the rejection comes internally. So if I don't know how to do a thing, if I don't know how to be the thing that I'm trying to do, then I am going to mishandle that thing that I'm trying to be. Husband at an early stage in my life was one of those things. Now, I'm saying all this because I recognize, like you said, I was not perfect as a husband. I made a lot of mistakes and I
Mhm.
own every last one of them. And I do not hesitate to say that. But in the midst of those mistakes, one of the things, the biggest mistake that I made during that time is not owning those mistakes.
Mm.
See,
Yep.
I think that's the thing. I think if he had owned the mistake, King Saul, if he had owned the mistake and accepted the punishment that would have came from them, well, I'm sorry, if he had owned the decision and accept the punishment that came with the disobedience found in that decision, then I think he still would have remained king. I think that applies to us as well because a lot of us won't own the decisions that we make. Therefore, what ends up happening is that we repeat those same mistakes moving forward. That was the toughest lesson that I've learned from rejection because I was not rejected. Like, I was the one who filed. I was the one, but a part of me was like, okay, if this is the thing in relationships are like a mirror unto myself about what I'm seeing, then a part of me has to own the fact that I may have set the conditions for what it is I'm seeing. And so that made me go further back in time. And yep, there it is. I found it. You used to do this. You used to do that. You used to do this. You did
Mhm.
all of those things that you thought were supposed to be done by men. Because what do men do? We provide and protect. And so, in the midst of establishing a safe place physically, right? You got a house, you got alarm, you got some, some self-protection weapons up in the house, things of that nature. The only thing that's left is what? Provide. Okay. So now what does that look like? Oh, let me buy you this. I'm gonna buy you this. I'm gonna just show up with this. I'm sure. And so now that becomes a standard that that person expects for you to continue to hold on to and maintain.
Mhm.
So I went back and I'm just being as honest as I possibly can be as it pertains to this question. So when I realized at a later point in time that there was some entitlement in there, looking for this, expecting this, blah, 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 blah. I'm not saying that I'm not saying that she wasn't um in error for those expectations, like I said prior to, but I was also in error for setting the conditions for those expectations to exist.
Mm. Man, you are cooking tonight. And I'm over here looking at this other question over here, and it ends with the word mindset. Um, so it's gonna be right up your alley. But I do want to be looking at the time, and we're about to wrap up. So if y'all could bear with us for about 3 to 5 more minutes, we're gonna push through. We got two factor myths, and then we'll just attack the last question and then avoid the actionable advice for this evening. So the first one is factor myth. You can train yourself to handle rejection better. Fact or myth?
Because of time, I'm just
Because of
gonna go
time.
and put it out there. Fact.
Mhm. Fact. And I think that's a good thing. And I think that's for anybody who is struggling and they looking at this and they like, man, I'm always falling apart. I can't handle it. This is just how I act. It's the way I was born. This is you can train yourself to handle rejection better. It is a fact. You can.
And if you listened to previously, we pretty much gave you the blueprint on how to do that.
There you go. Factor myth. Avoiding risk is the best way to avoid rejection.
Oh man, this is 100%. Myth.
Myth. There you go, folks.
Yeah.
Myth it is. I think sometimes it's okay to, this is just me personally, avoid certain risks once you do a certain risk assessment behind it or something like this, and it just don't blah blah blah. That's okay, but not to do it to just avoid rejection. That's just me personally, but
Well, you'll be surprised how many people live their life according to this principle.
yeah. But that is, and like you said, a lot of it is stuff that's made up in our head. And if you look at one of the biggest ones is something that so many people struggle with. And even we struggle with it a little bit when we first started podcasting on video. And
Hmm.
that is getting up in front of people. A
Yeah.
lot of people avoid it, but there's really no risk. The only risk is what's made up in your head. Like, people are going to sit there and they're going to look at you, and some people are going to look, and some people are not, and that's with any and everybody who has ever been in front of any sort of camera.
Hmm.
So,
Absolutely.
the last one. This is the last question. This is what's going to close us out for this evening. And we've talked about rejection, and all of these other things, but you being the mindset coach, I think is only right to have some question in here that talks about mindset tonight, because how people handle rejection and then the whole falling apart piece, I believe that it starts up in here. You know what I mean? In order for me to lift my hands up, my mind, my brain had to tell my hands to lift them up. So just like you, I'm a firm believer that almost everything, if not everything, starts with mindset. So
Yeah.
what does rejection reveal about your mindset?
Yeah. I think initially rejection reveals that I need to go outside and I need to get my rake, I need to get my hoe, I need to go get my weed puller, and I need to till my garden. I need to pull the weeds out of my garden. There is something in there that is making me view this thing that we call rejection as something that works against me. The problem is that when you kind of look at your mind as a garden, well, I won't say the problem. When you look at your mind as a garden, then you realize that whatever you plant in your garden will grow, good, bad, or indifference. So if I plant weeds in my garden is going to grow weeds. If I plant fruit trees, then my garden is going to grow fruit trees. Ideally, you want something that reproduces. And when I say reproduce, it not only grow, it develops, but it produces fruit. And the beautiful thing about a fruit is that the seed is found within the fruit. So why is that important? Because fruit that produce seed, so an item that produces seed can be replanted. If rejection is the thing that is sown within my mindset, then I need to understand what is the seed that led me to rejection, to view things as rejection, and more importantly, to view rejection in a negative light. What is the seed that was planted in my garden to reveal that in me? Because until I go and find that and dig it up, every time I'm rejected in any capacity whatsoever, I am going to take it as a personal attack. So it's revealing in me that I have something in me, in my mindset, that is producing bad fruit because it's working against me. What is the other side of it? The other side of it is that if I plant the right things in my garden, then not only will it produce good fruit, but those fruit will produce more fruit. So if you plant, let's just say, and I'm just a quick analogy for the sake of time, let's just say I eat one apple and I come out with three seeds. I can plant those three seeds and come up with a whole apple tree. That apple tree has a potential to produce, I don't know, let's just say 20 apples. But for the sake of conversation, each apple has three seed. And again, we know that's not true, but I'm just going to say, keep it simple. Now I got 60 seeds. Interesting, because that's how the mind is. Until we understand that, then we're not going to handle the garden of our mind correctly, because we're going to look at these things, right, as working against us. So that's the thing I would say. It reveals I need to go and pull the weeds out my garden. It reveals I need to plant some good stuff, plant more of the right stuff. so that in the end, when the harvest come, it's plentiful.
Man, you was on it, and I ain't adding nothing to that. I ain't about to chop that up none. So, folks, there you have it. You can find us here every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Coach's Corner, and Fridays Hearts of Men podcast. Anything else? Any more admin notes you want to say before we roll up out of here?
Yeah. In conjunction, third Saturday of every month, Hearts of Women. Fourth Saturday of every month, reframing the image of relationship. Every Sunday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and all of these times are Eastern Standard Times. Um, Sunday 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time is a Sunday brunch that we do. I think it's pretty awesome. And then, of course, at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do Bible study. So yeah, just get involved with the community. Come hang out, have fun, have great conversation, learn something in the process.
There you go, folks. Have a great evening, and we will see you next time. Peace.